The town had always been a quiet and safe place, the kind of community where neighbors knew each other and crime was rare. But in just 48 hours, everything changed. 7 women living in different parts of the town reported waking up in unfamiliar locations with no memory of what had happened to them. Each case followed a chillingly similar pattern. None of the women remembered being attacked, yet medical examinations confirmed they had been assaulted. The sheer number of victims in such a short period sent a wave of fear through the town. Panic spread quickly as news of the incidents broke. Women became afraid to walk alone, and families warned their daughters and sisters to stay indoors. The police launched an immediate investigation, aware that a serial predator was on the loose. The urgency of the situation was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't just one victim, it was 7, all within 2 days. The brutality of the crimes was horrifying enough, but the mystery surrounding them made it even worse. There were no witnesses, no security footage that captured anything useful, and no clear signs of forced entry in any of the cases. It was as if the attacker had vanished into thin air after each assault. The first victim was found unconscious on the side of a deserted road just before dawn. A jogger passing by noticed her lying motionless and immediately called for help. When paramedics arrived, they found no visible injuries except for a faint bruise on her wrist. It was only after she woke up at the hospital that she realized something was terribly wrong. Her last memory was of being at a coffee shop the previous evening, but everything after that was a complete blur. Before the police could fully process her case, another woman was found in a similar condition in a parking lot behind a shopping mall. Then another was discovered in a park, and then 4 more in different locations across town. Detectives working the case were baffled. The victims had no connections to each other, no shared workplaces, no common friends. Some were students, others professionals, all leading different lives, yet they had all been targeted within the same short period. The method of attack was also deeply unsettling. There were no reports of struggling, no signs of resistance, and no recollection of being taken or harmed. The only clue they had came from the toxicology reports. Each victim's system contained traces of an unknown substance, something powerful enough to erase short-term memories. The drug was not one typically found in cases of assault, making it clear that whoever was behind these attacks was not only calculating but also knowledgeable in the use of sophisticated substances. As fear grew, the police increased their presence in the town, setting up patrols and warning women to be extra cautious. But the real challenge was finding a suspect. Without a clear pattern or a known perpetrator, the case felt like chasing a ghost. Then, a breakthrough came. A grainy security camera image from a gas station near one of the crime scenes showed a shadowy figure walking away. The figure's identity was unclear, but it was the first real lead in a case that had already gripped the entire town in terror. The investigation took a new turn as detectives searched for any possible connection between the 7 victims. Each woman was interviewed extensively, but their answers only deepened the mystery. None of them recalled seeing a suspicious person before their attack. They had been going about their normal routine, some running errands, others out for dinner with friends, one simply walking home from work. There was no obvious pattern in the times or locations of the incidents, and the lack of memory made it nearly impossible for the victims to provide any useful descriptions of their attacker. Desperate for answers, detectives turned to digital forensics, digging through the victims' phone records, emails, and social media accounts. It was during this process that they discovered an unsettling common link. Each woman had recently received a message from the same anonymous online profile, one that called itself Dark Karma. The messages weren't identical but carried a similar tone, sometimes casual and friendly, other times oddly cryptic. One woman had received a simple "nice to see you today," despite having no memory of ever meeting the sender. Another had been sent a message saying, "You should be more careful." A third had been asked, "Do you believe in fate?" This discovery set off alarm bells. The messages had seemed harmless at the time, blending in with the usual spam or unsolicited messages people often ignored. But now, in the context of the attacks, they took on a far more sinister meaning. The investigators worked quickly to trace the origins of the account, but it had been created using sophisticated anonymity tools, making it difficult to track. The IP addresses led to dead ends bouncing between proxy servers across multiple countries. It was clear that whoever was behind the account had gone to great lengths to hide their identity. As detectives tried to break through these digital barriers, another significant clue emerged. One of the victims, determined to recall what had happened, agreed to undergo hypnosis therapy. The process was slow and difficult, but fragments of memory began to surface. She remembered a strong chemical smell, something sharp and artificial that made her dizzy. Then she recalled a sensation of being carried, her limbs too heavy to move. The most disturbing memory was a voice soft but firm whispering in her ear, "You won't remember, but I will." This chilling revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. It confirmed that the attacker had deliberately erased their victims' memories, ensuring they could never identify him. The level of control and precision suggested that he had done this before and would likely do it again. The discovery of dark karma and the whispered phrase pointed to a highly intelligent and methodical predator, someone who had spent a great deal of time perfecting his methods. The town's fear intensified as news of the online connection spread. Women began deleting unknown messages, shutting down social media accounts, and taking extra precautions when going out. But even as the police followed these digital leads, the real question remained: who was Dark Karma, and how was he choosing his victims? Detectives worked around the clock, trying to unmask the person behind the Dark Karma account. The messages had been sent from multiple devices, each one traced to public Wi-Fi networks across town coffee shops, libraries, and even a hospital waiting area. This suggested that the suspect was moving frequently, never staying in one place for long. The precision of his actions pointed to someone who understood law enforcement techniques, someone careful enough to leave no direct trace behind. With no single location to focus on, investigators shifted their strategy. They compiled a list of men who had access to restricted substances, particularly drugs capable of causing memory loss. Pharmacists, medical professionals, and chemistry students were all examined. Hundreds of names were screened, but only a few stood out. Among them were 3 men with potential connections to the case: a delivery driver who had access to multiple neighborhoods, a college professor specializing in pharmacology, and a nightclub bouncer with a criminal record. The delivery driver, Jason Wilkes, worked unpredictable hours and had been in the vicinity of several crime scenes. His job gave him the perfect excuse to be near different homes without drawing suspicion. When questioned, he seemed nervous but denied any involvement. A search of his vehicle revealed nothing suspicious, but investigators kept him under surveillance. The second suspect, Dr. Matthew Reeves, was a professor known for his research on neurological drugs. His work focused on chemicals that could temporarily erase memories, and he had access to substances similar to those found in the victims' toxicology reports. Reeves had a clean record, but his academic research raised concerns. When detectives visited his home, they found a well-organized study filled with books on cognitive manipulation. He cooperated fully, but something about his calm demeanor unsettled the investigators. The third suspect, Lucas Turner, was a former paramedic turned nightclub bouncer. He had been fired from his previous job due to allegations of misconduct, though none had resulted in criminal charges. His history included multiple complaints from women who claimed he had made them uncomfortable, but no one had ever pressed formal charges. Turner was physically strong, had basic medical knowledge, and was known for his aggressive behavior when intoxicated. His background, combined with his frequent presence in areas where the victims had been last seen, made him a prime suspect. Just as detectives were narrowing in on Turner, a shocking new development changed everything. A woman who had been missing for 3 months was found alive in an abandoned building. She was weak, malnourished, and had the same drugs in her system as the other victims. Unlike them, however, she had been held captive instead of left in a public place. This discovery suggested that the attacker's methods were evolving. If the previous victims had been left behind due to time constraints or mistakes, this new case showed that he was willing to escalate. When she was strong enough to speak, she gave investigators a crucial clue, a name. She had overheard the attacker talking to himself, muttering the word Lucas. This revelation sent detectives racing toward their main suspect, knowing that time was running out before he struck again. Detectives immediately focused their attention on Lucas Turner. His history, combined with the testimony of the rescued woman, made him their strongest suspect yet. They obtained a warrant to search his apartment, hoping to find concrete evidence linking him to the attacks. When they entered his residence, what they found was far more disturbing than they had imagined. In a small, locked room at the back of the apartment, detectives discovered an eerie collection of evidence. The walls were covered with photographs of women, some of whom had already been identified as victims. Each picture had handwritten notes scribbled beside them, dates, locations, observations about their routines. The level of detail suggested that Turner had been stalking his targets for weeks, possibly even months, before making his move. On a cluttered desk, investigators found several vials of clear liquid, later confirmed to be the same drug found in the victim's toxicology reports. There were also syringes, latex gloves, and a stack of burner phones, each one likely used to send messages from the Dark Karma account. The most disturbing discovery, however, was a leather-bound journal. Inside, Turner had meticulously documented each attack, writing about his methods, his thoughts, and his need to perfect the process. He referred to his victims as subjects, detailing how he had tested different dosages and techniques to ensure maximum memory loss. The evidence was overwhelming, but there was one major problem: Lucas Turner was nowhere to be found. His car was missing, his phone had been abandoned, and there were no signs of forced exit from his apartment. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. A nationwide manhunt was launched, with law enforcement agencies across the country alerted to be on the lookout for him. His face was plastered across news stations, and warnings were issued urging women to remain cautious. As police tracked down his known associates, a former co-worker came forward with a chilling piece of information. Turner had once spoken about the idea of erasing consequences, claiming that memory was the only real proof of wrongdoing. If a person couldn't remember an event, had it truly happened? This mindset, combined with his medical knowledge and history of predatory behavior, made it clear that he had been planning these crimes for a long time. In the days following the discovery at his apartment, authorities received several reports of potential sightings. He had been spotted at a gas station outside town, then at a bus station miles away. Each time he had managed to slip away before police could reach him. The idea that he was still out there, possibly preparing to strike again, sent waves of fear through the community. Then, a chilling message appeared on an online forum under the Dark Karma username. It read, "You think it's over, but memories fade. I don't." The post was quickly taken down, but it confirmed everyone's worst fears. Lucas Turner was still watching, still planning, and still determined to stay ahead of the law. The manhunt for Lucas Turner intensified as law enforcement agencies worked around the clock to track his movements. Despite multiple reported sightings, he remained one step ahead, slipping through the cracks each time authorities closed in. His ability to evade capture suggested that he had a well-thought-out escape plan, one that allowed him to move undetected. Police feared that as long as he was free, he would strike again. For days, investigators scoured security footage from highways, gas stations, and public transport hubs. They analyzed his past behavior, hoping to predict his next move. Psychological profilers warned that Turner wouldn't stop. His crimes weren't just about control, but about perfecting his methods. If he was on the run, it wasn't because he was afraid of getting caught. It was because he was planning something even bigger. Then a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A woman walking to her car in a parking garage late at night noticed a man leaning into the passenger seat of a parked vehicle. Something about his posture and the way he moved made her uneasy. As she got closer, she saw him pressing a syringe against a young woman's arm. Without hesitation, she screamed as loud as she could. The man flinched, dropping the syringe before bolting into the shadows. The intended victim, dazed and confused, stumbled out of the car. The woman's quick thinking had saved a life, but more importantly, she had gotten a good look at the attacker's face. When she reported the incident to police, her description was an exact match for Lucas Turner. Finally, after weeks of searching, they had confirmation he was still in the area, still hunting for his next victim. Detectives focused all resources on the vicinity of the attack. Plainclothes officers were stationed at bus stops, train stations, and motels known to shelter fugitives. They monitored transactions at ATMs, searching for any sign that Turner was accessing money. Then, in the early hours of the morning, a tip came in. A motel clerk had checked in a man matching Turner's description just 2 hours earlier. Police moved quickly, surrounding the motel before he could escape. When they entered the room, they found him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at a laptop screen. Dozens of files were open images of his victims, notes detailing their routines, and maps with locations marked in red. He didn't resist when officers moved in. Instead, he simply smiled and said, "Memory is such a fragile thing." With Turner finally in custody, the case against him was airtight. The physical evidence from his apartment, the survivor's testimony, and the attempt in the parking garage left no doubt about his guilt. He was charged with multiple counts of sexual assault, kidnapping, and attempted murder. In court, he showed no remorse, his only statement being that he had almost perfected the process. Turner was sentenced to life without parole, ensuring he would never harm another person again. Though justice was served, the scars left behind remained. His victims, forever changed, found solace in knowing he would never walk free. But the chilling nature of his crimes left a lingering question how many others like him were still out there, waiting for their moment to strike.